go. Hello, hello. It's Monday, and I know you're probably expecting to hear more Wayne Dyer, but we've had an interruption to our normally scheduled programming, which is we have some real magic going on as opposed to just the fake magic by reading the real magic book.
What is real magic anyway? Real magic is
Anytime we get together.
celebrating holidays and spontaneous occurrences.
Yeah, the magic of today is that Jael O'Hare, which is one of our favorite hosts around the Moira Press, has been on one lately and is having a transit where he has a lot to say. And so we wanted to hear from him. There's the July 4th holiday, and he had a kind of essay of thoughts. And so we're here to actually hear from Jael about what's going on. So hit us.
Great. Would you rather, we're just, I don't know if you wanted me to read things or just talk about them, because it might be easier to do. I don't know. Did you have a preference?
Um, I don't know, maybe talk organically, and then if that runs
Yeah,
out, we can read it.
great. So let's see. Okay. Case, let me grab my. So, been thinking about how to talk about this very difficult problem that we have right now, which sort of surrounds unreality and the fact that we're having this fracturing reality where people are more and more siloed into separate camps. And it's different than just the way that it's different than it has been in the past, where there sort of was one mainstream culture and thought, and people might have been on different sides of issues inside of that. But with the internet and social media and algorithms that can deliver exactly what we want to hear back to us in this sort of way, certain aspects of marketing and propaganda and consumerism that have already been present in their current form for 100 years are really getting more extreme in terms of this, again, lack of shared reality. And a lot of this, for me, is something that I thought about in terms of how.
Wow, there is a lack of shared reality right here.
Yeah. Oh, that's the term I was gonna write down to talk about, lack of shared reality. I think that's interesting. So what Jael is saying is uh technology is separating us each into our own echo chamber. And because we're splintered into each our own echo chambers, there's a lack of shared reality. Right, JL? Is that what you were saying?
Uh, from what I caught, it sounded great. I'm so
Okay.
sorry about my connection. Uh, but yeah, so and I think that we all know that too, but I don't know that we understand the mechanisms behind it. And I have some thoughts. I like to model things in ways that can be seen on structurally on multiple levels. So I like to look at, this is why I'm an astrologer also, because I like to look at things at different levels. And so one of the things I was thinking about is sort of like how we can look at waveforms, how they interact in terms of. Wait, I'm sorry, maybe I got way ahead of myself there. Sorry, I got thrown off by the thing. Um, okay, so yeah, right. Okay. So I think a lot of us have heard of the cordyceps mushroom. It like infects the ants, and then the spores grow in its body, and then it takes over its brain, and it tells it to crawl up onto this high spot, and then the ant becomes the mushroom, and then it's does its bidding in that way. And I feel like that's sort of like what's been happening with our causes and our beliefs, like because social media has turned us not only like even more so into both products as we are consumers. Everybody is a brand and everybody's needing to build a brand, and then the qualities or the value point, the things that you can add to your brand to give it more value are these like intangible things which ultimately come down to identity. And identity, in history has had its own problems certainly, but it's like never been commodified in this particular way, at least that I know of. And so
Can I
we're
speak to that?
yes, please.
Okay, so I really think this is interesting what you're saying because with Neptune going into Aries, and it's like the glamorization of self into like a Hollywood format. Like people always they're talking about glorifying of war, but like when I think of Aries, I think of like me, myself, and I, right? It's like so Neptune on in Aries is like, who am I in the Hollywood sense? Who am I as this kind of branded commodity figure? And then Saturn and Neptune being together, it's like you're taking a kind of harsh look at that is like, is that positive? Is that negative? Kind of thing. And you're saying it's never been people have never been commodified in this fashion. I think that's interesting.
Well, because the new, it's sort of like there's barely any resources left in the class of people that are being mined. There's this great wealth, like the land, like everything is owned by this very small number of people. So now what commodities are like ourselves and our attention. So like everything that we pay our attention to, we're like literally paying that is the resource we now have. And
Whoa.
so we literally are paying with our attention and then buying things like whatever we give our attention to. So and then that
Hey, wait, can I
also
say
is
something about that?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, you guys see how Giles Mercury works? Just like Giles a talker, so if you want to say something, just raise your hand or whatever. But Jael, that's amazing. Like that's a meme right there. Pay attention. Are you paying for attention? Like pay that's a meme right there, right? Because from what I've been reading with these artist books, it's like everyone, all the artists are like, well, everything's like flooded, and they're like the complainy kind of vibe is that like everything's flooded. But what you're saying is someone paying you with attention right now, and that is actually the commodification of art. That's brilliant, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
We need a
And
meme with your face on it, like pay attention, bro. Okay.
right. Exactly. But we also have to be really careful because I don't think that we necessarily interact with learning about things that relate to our identity as something that we're buying or being sold, but it is. And also, what really makes it tricky is that the actual content that is sort of being like infected and zombified by this system is legitimate. Like, for example, the gay rights movement is a legitimate thing that started a gender nonconforming people, like in trans people, like that is a legitimate organization and real group of people that got together and fought for rights and things like that. But like pretty much because marginalization has become a hot commodity due to its ability to spark outrage, the number one value item on the social media landscape. Uh, People like there's been a sort of instead of going away from marginalization, there's a sort of clamoring for it in a certain way. And then it's because people are interacting with claiming identity now in a marketplace type of way instead of just a like, these are the facts of who I am. I have brown hair. I'm
Okay,
tall or
wait.
I'm short.
Okay, I got one. So what I hear you saying is you're taking identity politics to a level where it was trans queer, it was like the in thing as far as identity politics, and now you're saying the identity politics is reaching into the commodification of self on and offline. And Jay-Z, I'm really interested in your thoughts on that because you've been through both of those movements, and you're kind of rendering your brand into an online thing where you're like taking videos of yourself making like motorcycle, changing the oil on your motorcycle. And like, do you feel that as a trans man that you're now having to fight for your identity in the more social media sphere as opposed to where you used to kind of fight for it in the like gender sphere?
I would say no.
Okay.
In that, yeah, I don't feel like I do have to fight for my identity, um, because I guess I feel secure in my identity, so I just uh am presenting my identity. Uh, what's funny is like so before you're right, like I have lived through this. I mean, I was thinking about what it would be like to be online, before everybody could get their own YouTube channel. There was, this crazy thing called Big Brother where, they put cameras everywhere, or before that was The Truman Show, or so you got to step back to these things that were a groundbreaking thing then, but now anybody can do it that wants to do it.
So it's again, this is why this is so tricky. It's not that it's not real that people are still queer and trans, or people are still whatever. I mean, this applies to race or religion, anything. It's more that uh because of that nature, it's changing sort of like how people are interacting with identity. And you, Jay-Z, are somebody who is like mature and settled in your identity and came to it, in a way and in an era that sort of wasn't affected by that in the same way. But when okay, I'm missing some pieces. So part of the thing is that when something is a commodity that can be sold, that means that anybody with money can buy it, right? Because that's the equality that I was talking about in my piece, as far as like equality, as in uh, turning everyone and everything, like just seeing every part of life as uh, a potential market item. So everything should and can be standardized into little cubes. And now that has moved into these sort of intangible spaces, we're having younger people forming their identities online by doing this more kind of buying and selling thing. And again, it's less about whether the content part of the thing they're buying and selling is true, and more that uh more that leading to another point that I haven't gotten to yet,
Wait,
which
wait.
is
Sorry.
yes.
Can I go
Yeah.
on? So, Alexander,
It's
I'm really interested in because you're always an equalist and you're always fighting for equality and like the underdog, basically. So, Alexander, how do you feel about the fact that some pages get lots of views and some identities or people or characters get lots of views and they get more paid more attention versus some pages that get less attention? And is there an equalizing factor? Or like, how does that sit with your kind of equalist thing?
An equalist, which I didn't know until now. I, well, I think you can't take the capitalism out of this. The only people that have escaped the commodification and the capitalism of social media are people experiencing homelessness. Everybody else has been commodified, and at some point, people experiencing homelessness are going to have an app for it, and they may already. Or there's going to be the homeless wear, homeless shoes, homeless this, homeless that, because um, capitalism will look for a spot to disrupt the equality by trying to sell whatever it can sell to whomever will buy it. And if you put on social media um, hot dogs without mustard, and without is in caps, you'll get ads for that for 6 weeks, because there's a market there and people are looking for niche markets to sell to. So the idea of social media is really not to be social, but it's to sell. And we can use the tool of selling to to make ourselves more equal by relating to each other. And we can ignore the other things in the tool. So I feel like if we're going to find equality in this, we have to fight for it. And so what we have to realize is that social media is just a tool. And if you look at J.G. Ballard and David Cronenberg, um, you can either be part of the tool. For example, a car cannot run without the tool. So the person behind the steering wheel is the tool. or you can control that car, and then the car is the tool and you are the controller.
So you could
Car,
go on social media and give stuff you could give on social media. That would be
you
a way to
could.
control the capitalist tool.
Well,
You
right, I
could.
think the difference is awareness, right? So like, and that's kind of like where I'm going with this stuff is not because I don't think we can actually stop any of it from happening. Like, I mean, I'm not personally capable of taking down whatever this giant machine is, but I think the issue with the stuff I'm bringing up is sort of setting the stage for how the lack of awareness most of us have or can even have because of how high level the manipulation is sort of like really the issue. And like the way that, like, for example, I now get into ideological fights with people that I have 99% agreement with on a particular topic, but I am seeing and disagreeing with a thing that they're doing that I can see is an extension of this particular dictate that sort of comes from this system, which is about commodifying and division and like and I don't know. There's like a lot of different aspects
I
to it.
think it depends on
But
what you're commodifying. If you're I mean, maybe you're deciding to be a philanthropist on social media. That's, I mean, but
Well, it's not a criticism of individual people selling themselves because like we have to do that. It's more that like so okay, can I say another part of this to help contextualize what I'm saying?
yeah, but
So
I just
like
want to add before you do that, I want
sure.
to say what you're talking about, people arguing back and forth, that's a kind of equality because both of the people in the argument, let's say, one side, however many people, the other side, however many people, they both have a voice now. So you've achieved a kind of equality by disagreeing because you've given everybody a voice. And it's different from one person proselytizing in an email that gets sent out to 5,000 people. Social media has enabled us to argue. And in a way, I see that as equality because you can take your closest friend for 35 years and say, no, Melvin, you're full of shit. And that is equal footing.
hey,
Yeah.
Jael.
Well,
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Jay-Z.
well, I just want to say something to what Lumiere said, which is there's also, in my opinion, a bit of a signal to noise ratio problem with
Yeah,
the conflict on social media because I feel a lot of it is contrived, a lot of it is trolling, and it's hard to have an equal discussion when the two parties have different goals, and one party has a goal of uh, trolling the other party, and when they have an earnest goal of trying to communicate, then
right,
like that is what I think is problematic on social media.
right. That's very true. And I think that what I think there are people that are looking for an argument and they're trying to turn every topic into a Jerry Springer show. But I guess I was talking more about people people that you know and trust.
Oh yeah. I mean, discussions are I don't know. I don't have any issue with that at all. I mean, and I think that's true. Having the marketplace for that is great. I think the issues that I have where I'm more concerned about are more about like the fact that these tools and really just all of modern life is quite literally designed to dysregulate us emotionally and break up our ability to like think well and to be in this sort of off kilter state because emotionally dysregulated people buy more stuff, pay more attention, doom scroll more, fight more, which feeds the algorithm more. So we want to be fighting because there are real things that we want to fight about and not because a computer studied us and created an algorithm to upset us so that it could get more food for the machine.
Well,
And
it
so
makes me
like
think of astrology and how it wasn't supposed to be given to people who were uninitiated. And that, Vedic fans would say that in order to be a good astrologer, you have to be of sound mind. And I think if you are easily dysregulated, social media will dysregulate you. But if you're very strong of character, like you can maintain like extreme
right,
regulation while dealing with this tool.
exactly, which
Yeah.
is like why the awareness is so important. So like basically the kind of the other part of this that I think needs to get brought in is that our culture and the nature of this sort of beast, if you will, the consumerism, is akin to like the not the pop idea of it, but like narcissistic personality disorder or vampires, zombies, it's this kind of thing. But essentially what it is a not self. It is, instead of creating the conception of a self, it's creating a conception of the self by not like having one or not having one. And then, so sorry, I'm just got way off with that. But basically that's sort of like in narcissism, clinically speaking, what we're actually talking about, not grandiosity, not like whatever these stereotypes they say. It's about physical, like internally not having a sense of self. You can only have a sense of self by creating a narrative in the minds of other people. So you kind of like, that's why it ends up being this controlling thing, because you have to sort of like create this narrative and then animate the puppets in your life to hold up the narrative. And that when that narrative gets destroyed, it feels like death. It's like it's an existential threat. And so because consumer culture and Western culture, in a lot of ways, at least in its capitalistic forms, is basically just that on the large scale. What is consumerism? It is saying I need something and I need to acquire something. So there's all of this marketing and brainwashing getting blasted on us all the time to say that we are, as a baseline, not whole, we're effed up, and we need to acquire outside things. Whereas I would say the opposite, what I advocate for, is teleology, understanding what you are already whole and like just trying to like study and discover what your telos is, and then having that coming into the world, as opposed to the culture we're living in now has this like it's all about like I have to add things, I have to add new things in, and it's all about not being, which is like in the queer community you can see that like gay female people don't want to be female or lesbian, like they're like everything else but that, like everyone's like having
I have
identities
to
that are
say
about
something.
not,
I have to say something.
yeah, okay,
Okay,
sorry.
okay. So I agree with you that that the social media tools basically make us into an aggregate of self, right? Like we are no longer a self locus. We are an aggregate of all the characters who come into our page, all the people that we are interacting with, their input, and like how much agency you take on or give away should be done parsimoniously and as a choice, right? So it's like you shouldn't just be like, oh, whatever everyone said, now that's what I am, and all. It's like what strong artists do is they say like, I am saying this. Oh, I'm open for some co-creation. Okay, now I'm letting the people inform myself. Okay, and like you're saying, Talos, like, oh, my Talos is doing this now. Okay, open for some co-creation, because Talos, or like any identity, should be a dance between self and community. As you brought up in the gender astrology show, is your gender just whatever you say it is, or is it a dance between how you're read and what you say it is? And so I think that, like, I really like those points that you're bringing up.
Yeah, because
Okay,
it's
but
not equally, it's equally good or bad to be any identity, and we've gotten into this place where we feel like some things are better than other things, but sorry.
well, I'm wondering, how is this different than in any age? Like
Well,
in the past, say you've always had artists who are, so talk about like rock music, right? So you have an artist who played some rock and roll, and then their audience expects them to keep playing like a certain kind of rock and roll, but they don't want to play that anymore, and they're sick of those songs, so they do something, but then they lose popularity, and it's a dance between the things that make you as an artist feel creatively expressed, and that in which an audience pays you attention for with their attention. So I think this is a concept that's always been around, but maybe what you're saying is with the current technology, it's easier and faster to get derailed, or like the youth of today we're afraid for, or like what are we saying here?
Well, okay. I mean, on one hand, I think everything that can exist has already existed, and there's not really anything new in a certain on a certain level. That's just true about everything. Um, I do think these things change face over time, and it is in the periods where they are transitioning where we haven't quite gotten hip to the scam that are some of the more dangerous times. And we are in a transition period right now. I mean, I do think technology is expanding it, but whether or not it's been around forever or levels, whatever, I find that very few people are having a lot of awareness about this, particularly with young people, because I'm mostly seeing a sort of not self identity pattern coming, like how young people are trying to form their identities is coming from this not self thing of like, so this is where I was going to make the waveform analogy because I think it's more clarifying. So when you have a wave at a certain frequency that meets another wave that's at the same frequency, even if they're like maybe one's louder or quieter or whatever, but they just add together and they amplify each other. So basically, if you are on one vibe and you interact with something else that's on the same vibe, it kind of like increases or goes the other way. But if you and then if you meet something that's at a different phase, meaning like it's not the, I wish I had a picture, but it's not the exact same frequency, but like then you get this dissonance, and that's sort of like square aspects, right? Like it's like there's a dissonance, but it doesn't but it sort of creates spots where there's like a beat, and there's like, so it kind of like amplifies the parts that do match and it makes the parts that don't match quieter. But if you have a wave that is exactly the same as the one that you have, but flipped, and they meet, what happens is they nullify each other. And what I think is positive is dissonance, because dissonance is creativity. Sameness is like, can be supportive and amplifying. But what I'm talking about is the nullification. And so, for example, like in the queer community, when it was literally illegal to be gay, saying like taking on things of being rebels and being against and being like queerness was about disrupting, because the idea at the time was like, we all have this intrinsic value that is the power structure is saying is bad or is not of value. And so it was like radical and life supporting to be like, yeah, queerness, rebellion. But like, that has been chopped up by the commodification machine, and it's not rebellion in context anymore. It's just rebellion, period.
Well, and I think the question there is how to rebel nowadays, now that all identities are aggregate and everyone's everything and all these things. It's like, how do we rebel? But also, I want to say something about this. Your point should be taken by people. Self, not self, is the identity question here with the construction of social media, is like, what is me and what is this aggregate of the collective me that's coming in through social media? And like, who are you? Are you self or not self? And like, it makes me think of those gender euphoria stickers. It's like, you should be like self euphoria. Like, because of course you get called a narcissist if you're too selfie of yourself, and like yeah, nice. But yeah, I think, and then to speak to your point about conflict versus harmony, they say that when people are in conflict, they're more productive and more creative. And I think you're definitely onto something about there. It's like allowing for conflict in this space between self, not self, would allow you to be more productive and creative as you journey your telos, as opposed to just being like this like harmonious factory of not self, mamby-pamby milquetoast BS.
Well, I mean, it's just, you don't ever end up being happy or effective when you're not being yourself, and you have and it feels wrong, so then you feel bad, so then you feel like you have to do more getting manipulated. But the big thing though is like, when you as a person take something like queerness is rebellion, that means I'm a rebel, and then you cut up, it's like what we did with nutrition. We're like, vitamin C. If you just take that, what you're doing is flipping the waveform. So like, when you interact with something, you're not even disrupting it. You're just nullifying yourself and the other person. Because that's the other part of this that's really important to understand, is that a not self replicates itself. A not self consumes the other being it interacts with, and then you have one larger blob of not self. And so it's like this like blob monster that eats, you know. People who experience narcissistic abuse, for example, have to like go through a whole process of recovering from that, and will have qualities that are in line with that dynamic and that patterning.
Okay, Jay-Z
So
has a comment.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused here, or a lot confused, because I don't understand what you mean about like queerness has been broken down or commodified. Like, do you think like it's like too easy to be queer, or there are too many people that are queer, or there are too many ways of being like I totally don't understand where you're going with that part of it.
Maybe we're post queerness. No, sorry, go.
Are you
Well, I
saying
mean,
that queerness is a brand now?
yes. So what I'm saying is, and this is true about a lot of things, is because there's something that is true about it for people, but it's when something becomes commodified on the market in that way and turned
Wait,
into this
okay,
thing.
hold on. I guess I don't understand how queerness has been commodified. Like, is it's too, or too, has it, or that it's become branded, or that, like,
Well,
yeah,
I mean, not just
maybe I don't
queerness, like
understand.
all identity.
I'm not familiar enough with the culture of it, or
Well,
you
I
know.
mean, you can be a married straight couple and be queer now. That is true. That's not totally what I'm talking about, but like, it's what I'm saying is
Has
everything about like,
queerness jumped the shark?
well, I mean, sort of, but it's not about a material reality that is shared by people who share a material reality anymore. It's like a meme or an idea or a vibe. It's a brand. Like, and there are a lot of people who are not homosexuals who identify as queer. So like, because it's turned in, but it's not
It's
about
like
that. It's not
dissolved.
about
It doesn't mean
policing.
the same thing. I agree with you. It's like the Neptune and Pisces dissolved people into just being whatever they are. Like we're all a veritable rainbow nowadays. I agree with you. I mean, I don't know if it's been commodified, but I hear you. It's been dissolved or dissiluted kind of thing.
But
Yeah, well, so
it's not
is
a
it?
policing issue, though. I'm not worried about policing people's who's doing it. My problem with it is that, for example, it's like what I was saying earlier about the Butch support group says Butches can't be cops. So like now we have people make statements like this all the time. They're like, if you don't adhere to this ideology that is the brand and the meme, then you can't be a part of the thing, or you are a part of the thing, whatever it is. But whatever it is not based in material reality, one. And it's all just about like what the I don't know, like what is shaping it is sort of like what is gets purchased on the collectively creative thing. Because like the over
You can go. You
the
guys can go East Coast on this. Just talk. Everyone talk. I don't know.
sorry,
Well,
yeah.
I'm not sure, like, so it seems that now everything, it maybe the problem that you're stating is that like everything's a spectrum, and so everybody can be anywhere on any of the spectrums of anything, which I think is so anybody can say this is my identity. My identity is a collection of like this on the scale from this to this, another on the scale from like whatever, and so it seems to me like individuality is more multidimensional now than you used to have to choose like I am straight or I am not straight, or I am male or I am female, or I am neurodivergent or I am whatever the other thing is.
Your
Right. And
identity could depend on
yeah.
the post. It could be like, I have this identity for this post.
I mean, and that is true, but again, I don't know. It's so I'm having such a hard time like say what I'm really, because that's not I'm not complaining that there are spectrums. it's, but what I am saying is that we have lost shared meaning, and we don't have a shared reality anymore because these things, like things like queer or whatever, because that's what products do, right? Like products want to be buyable by the largest number of people, so they become vague and sort of like reflect back. Like a good brand will have, everybody will see themselves in the brand, and then they will want to buy the thing. So like it's,
So if we become Babel, like where words have no meaning and we can't communicate?
I mean, we're getting
What do
pretty
you mean if we
close.
become?
I think we're pretty close.
But I think that there are a lot of issues that I see can be separated into components that we may or may not have time to talk about. But there's, I mean, in relation to identity, there's also um, uh, there's branding, and there's first of all, I can't escape capitalism. I can't unwrap
Oh yeah.
the wires from around capitalism, so it's always there. And when the straight white community decided that black gay was going to make money, they supported it. And you can go back. I see everything through the eyes of film. You could go back to the 70s where people were making white film after white film after white film. And some producers said, wait a minute, black people aren't going to the theater. So they made black exploitation film. And black people came to the theater, and they were directed by who? White people. But black people were in them. So I believe that black people did not have a voice, but they saw themselves on screen, and it led to a voice.
Thank
So
you.
gay rebellion started out at Stonewall. Let's pick a spot. Let's say Stonewall. It started at Stonewall, and the only thing to do was rebel. The IRA needed to rebel, and the only thing they could do in Northern Ireland was to blow shit up. But now they're in Parliament, and now the rebellion has taken a form so gradually in the queer community, so gradually that now there are so many parts of the voice that they all are vying to be heard, and they could be in a way that they could not be in the 70s, 60s, 80s even. And so what we have, I think, that if I don't have a thing to, okay. So spectrum to me is not from here to here, but spectrum to me is the sides of an object. So I feel like there's more opportunity because there's been more discussion. And so any community that's been marginalized has, we can talk about, in mainstream media, we can talk about how queer people are being targeted in a certain city in a certain part of this country. But we can talk about it now, and we couldn't 40 years ago. Mainstream media would never report that. When Shepard died, you had a hard time finding anything about Shepard dying on the first of any newspaper anywhere. So I think social media has done that. What we have to do is beef up our critical analysis skills, which have been whittled down by constant. I want to blame television because it's the root of all evils. Whittled our critical analysis skills. It seems to me, and all this has, it seems to me over it. It seems to me has been, our critical analysis skills have been whittled down so that we don't know how to critically analyze anything. So you have to be able to look at, I'm going to use my example, social media, to say, that's a product that they're trying to sell me because they can make a profit. This is my friend who has a real opinion. This is a troll whom I can ignore. This is another friend that just wants to touch base. And so you have to parse all these out into individual parts of the spectrum and say, I'm going to choose which of these I will respond to, or I'm going to choose which I will initiate. Andy?
Okay, so I've been reading this book on actors, self-management for actors, because we are all actors, is what Giles proposing, is like with Neptune and Aries, like we've all become this commodified Hollywood version of ourselves, acting online and trying to be paid more attention to and all this kind of stuff. And what they say you're supposed to do as an actor is create your character, whatever it is. Like I knit, I crochet, I do this, I'm queer, I had a boyfriend in my 20s, like whatever, all these things that make your character. And then you render your character per the situation. So like it could be per the post. Like here's a post in this post, I'm rendering this part of my character over here. Oh, this is selling something to me. I'm not, my character's not going to interact with that. Okay, this, so it's like, and then there's going to be posts and things that are in brand for you and out of brand for you. If it's like the Portland Pickles baseball, you're just like, just not in brand for me. My identity, my Talos says nothing about the Portland Pickles. Like, so I hear what you're saying, Jael, where you're talking about a post deconstructionist moment in history where we have gone beyond these little labels and we're rendering ourselves per the post, per the situation, and that people could commodify that, or we can be total badass teleologists and say like my telos doesn't do that purchasing right there. You know what I mean?
Well, and people don't know what their telos is. They have a lot of people, especially young people who grew up on the internet, don't really know who they are actually, and so it's like less about me being mad that specific people buy certain identity brands for themselves, and I don't think they should, because ultimately I'm not a cop and I don't like to tell people about that, but it is a problem for me if people are constructing themselves out of things that are not true to their nature because they won't be happy. Like they're not gonna do a good job being in the role that they're at. The people who need and expect them to be in that role are not going to be happy. It's just like a recipe for unhappiness for all of society, not to mention the fact that it makes us incredibly easy to control and manipulate, which is kind of the whole point of it to begin with, is to have everybody fighting each other. And it's like we got the MAGA and then the queers on the other side, but it's like a lot of people from both sides are doing the exact same thing, but it's the inverse wave, and we
Okay, I made a band
nullify
name.
each other.
I made a band name for you because we make band names.
Yeah.
Talos Control with an X. Like, how can we totally figure out our life purpose and our telos is a good question there. And how can we remain strong in that in this deconstructionist era of social media? I feel like that's the question you're asking, is like, how can we maintain telos control in
Right.
this modern day?
Well,
I can't
that's
control
why
my
I say,
tails,
for
but
one, we need shared meaning, and shared meaning should be rooted in material reality.
Nice. What, Lumiere?
well, I was going to say I don't know my tail is from a ham sandwich, so I'm out of that loop. But I feel like the shared reality should always be humanism. And if we can't, and we're so far away from that that we don't know humanism from anything. So I feel like that should be the goal, because that would solve a lot of
How
problems.
do you define humanism?
A person that thinks that that supports the humanity of life, and that you are only as good as the person standing next to you as far as surviving, as far as thinking, as far as critically analyzing the world. And in community, when people talk about how it's much easier to look at a broken hobbin jogger and say, but if you say, I have a broken hobbin jogger, do you know anything about this? It's much better, because we need that, and that's human. I don't know what's wrong with this thing, but I'm going to fix it. I don't need any help. I'm good. I'm good. That's not human, and that's where we are right now. And I'm part of that. And this is another thing to parse out in another 6 hours. But we've been sold the myth of individualism, which doesn't work. But it's an easier way for the entities that are trying to sell us something to control us, if they think that we if we think we're a rugged individual, which we're not. And it's also part of the concept that we can never be happy. So if you're never happy, you're very willing to buy the next thing that is for sale, because all you know is that you're never happy. I have a lawn chair, but it doesn't have enough pink in it. So I'm going to go out and buy a lawn chair with a lot. Look, the lawn chair has pink in it. You can never be happy in the culture that we live in. So if we were to say
Silo, that's back to the silo proposition.
enough, we say enough. I've got enough.
Mm.
All right, but then it does, for me, get to identity in some ways. Like the way, Jael, you were saying, it has to get back to a shared reality, right? The problem is that identity is not a shared reality. Because so for me as a trans guy, I do have an issue with people who say, well, biologically, what parts did you have when you were born? And that's what you are. That is reality. That is physical reality. And we need to go back to sharing physical reality as the arbiter of all facts. Because I don't think that identity always aligns with your perception of physical reality or my perception of physical reality, because I think there are a lot of things that are relative, and I think there are a lot of things that getting back to the part and what we were reading in the Wayne Dyer book last week about like relationships. The other person, you are only an image in somebody else's mind. Like you and I could go to bed, Lumiere and I could go to bed cuddling at night, and then we wake up in the morning and I turn around and I'm like, oh, Lumiere, I just had this amazing dream. And I try to explain it to him. There's no way he can understand my dream, the dream that I just had, right? So there is some things that are not shared reality.
But, but the shared part of that is that I'm trying to understand. Also, I have to get up and pee. But before that, I'm trying to understand. I really want to know how you feel. And if I can't see the dream where the elephant says you have a match, it doesn't matter to me as long as I understand how you felt about it. So we can share that. We just can't share the idea of the dream. And Jael, you said that you're concerned about young people, especially because they don't seem to have a kind of identity because of the internet mostly. Well, I have a 14-year-old who plays games all the time, and I feel like his identity is strong. However, I have to say that people in my generation, I'm 2 days older than Methuselah, they did not know who they could be. They did not know who they were supposed to. They knew who they were supposed to be. They were told who they were supposed to be from kindergarten on. And then you either had to choose that you were going to do that and conform to that. And I went to high school with many people whose lives were just a book written and they just turned the page to see what they were supposed to do next. Or you just said, fuck that. And those were sort of your options. And I grew up with a lot of people who didn't know how to live. And they didn't know for a fact until much later in life that they could be happy. Happiness was not an issue. Success was an issue,
Sure.
whatever that meant.
Right. So, for one, my idea here is actually to integrate the like, I don't even know I could be happy or fuck everything. Like, sort of that's my thing in general is to like to be having a way to like hold all of the everythingness and integrate all the parts. So when I'm talking about shared reality, I don't mean everyone has the exact same thoughts. What I mean is stuff like language that has shared meaning. So that's actually kind of the main way that we have shared reality actually is by like, because you're right, on one level there's no way to do it, but that's why we make a decision to say everybody, this is a D, this is a O and a G, and this together means dog, and that's one of them, and that's one of them. So we and these things, they do change over time, but there is much less cohesiveness now than I know of in remembered history of not having that shared reality, partially because we're trying to have this global community, and people inherently, and I think in a healthy way, are going to have localized, smaller, it's like there's levels, like you have a shared reality maybe with your partner and your friends, and then there's maybe one in your community and da da da. So it's not like everything is exactly the same, but it has to be enough shared that you can actually talk to each other, which is kind of the thing that I'm getting at here, because we're not able to talk to each other. And I actually disagree with a lot of the stuff that gender and queer theory has turned into in the last like 5 years in particular. And maybe that was just me not realizing it was this all along, but it does feel like a change to me, which is like, uh, for example, to be a trans person, like you have to recognize that there was a thing that happened. So the point to me is not to say all trans people should be brutalized into gender stereotypes that match their sex at birth. Like, that is not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is, if you're trans, then you're trans. Like, that's
Like your supposition is that a trans male is different than a bio male.
yes.
What do you think of that, Jay-Z?
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's a special.
Which, I mean, I feel like people our age, that was never even in my mind as a thing. But I have had plenty of conversations, especially with people who are more like 35 and under, who are like, once you transition, you have always been that sex. You've never been your birth sex. And no one can ever talk to me about anything related to that because I just always am this, and the end. And that doesn't, I think that causes more problems than the actually just being like, I'm living this way part now.
Oh yeah, well, I can say that now, but I do have to say that transitioning is a process, and it was difficult to kind of even move my own mind about it. So I might have said things like that or felt things like that at that time. I don't feel now, Like I think that in my transition process. I did want people to kind of like go along with it and just ignore that other stuff for now so that I could come out the other side. So,
Right.
um,
Well, I
I,
guess the
I don't
difference
want
for
to be
me, though, is
dishonest about that either.
having that grace for each other interpersonally is a kindness that I have no problem with. But we're having confusion about it on a legislative level now. And that I do think is a problem. Like we have like government problems now about like, how are we going to do statistics if gender is just to choose your own adventure for statistics? Like, I don't care if it's choose your own adventure for what you say to your friends when you're walking down the street and stuff, but like misogyny is still very real.
Yes.
Like,
Okay,
the
well, I
idea
have
of
to.
the idea of census and statistics were and are still to gather the most money from the group that will have that money. So maybe the statistics do not need to be collected the way they've been collected.
I mean, that's fine, but marginalized groups need to be able to say, this is what the group is. And as a group,
Okay, I'm
like
gonna have to
we
clip
have
us
a
here.
voice that isn't imposed by somebody else.
I'm gonna have to clip us here, Jael. I know you could keep us entertained for hours.
Oh, yeah. I
No,
mean,
can I speak to your chart?
sure. Yeah.
So everyone who's listening, Jael has a Mercury, Pluto, Saturn conjunction. Is that true?
Yes.
So Jael's Mercury is popping, always popping, and when Jael gets on one, I like to have him on the show because I like to hear what he has to say. And I have to thank you for getting these guys a little fire under their asses. I mean, we're so peaceful around here most of the time, but we actually
Oh, okay.
I saw them like get all up in the frame a little bit, so I really appreciate that.
Good.
Okay, what do you think of this title? Social media and identity as an aggregate and the commodification of self.
Too
Sure.
long.
Too
A
long.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait, what should I call it?
The mouthful. It's not a band name, that's for sure.
How about social media and identity as an aggregate? Or which we call this today?
Oh, today?
How about
The identity politics of social media.
zombification of identity or something like that. I don't know.
Ooh, I like that. You know, I love zombies.
I mean, but I don't know. Maybe we should
Identity
try. I
control.
need to like. I
Yeah,
haven't.
Controls identity.
Identity
identity
control. What do you
control.
think about that?
Yeah,
It's catchy, and it's a good band name.
there you go.
All right, you guys, I gotta clip it. I gotta go. But thank you, Jael, and thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank
Sorry, I
you,
wasn't more clear.
Oh, that
Jael,
was
your
great.
That was
Mercury,
fun.
your Mercury is perfect. You are here to give us many, many micro points. We're just gonna have to go East Coast on you. We're gonna have to talk over you. That's it. That's the only tweak we had to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All
All right,
right.
you guys.
Bye,
Thanks, guys.
everybody. Love
Bye.
you.